Welcome to today's meeting of the North Wales Police and Crime Panel. I'm Dawn Hughes and I'm the Scrutiny and Committee Services Officer for Conway. So can I take you to the first agenda item, which is appointment of chair? Can I have any nominations, please? John Williams. Is that seconded? Any other nominations? Can I have a show of hands of all those in favour then, please? I think that's unanimous. John, can I ask you to come up? Thank you.
I'd like to nominate Pat Asprey, please.
Second. Yeah. Any other nominations? Edgar. Do you have a seconder? None. Okay. So we move to ask members to show their hands for the nominations.
Yes, go with Pat.
Yeah. Can we show our hands for Pat, please?
Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And against? And those against, Pat? 1, 2,
Abstention.
2. Abstentions? No. Okay. And can I ask the show of hands for Edgar, please? 2, 3. Thank you. Yeah, and the nomination for Pat is carried, so Pat is the vice chair. Thank you. You want to come up, Pat? Next, item 3 is apologies for absence.
Yeah, I've had apologies from Shona Davis and John Pugh.
And item 4 is declarations of interest, code of local government conduct. Anybody? No, thank you.
Sorry, it was, yeah, forgot. My husband works for North Wales Police. So I'll be staying in the room, but just to make that noted, please.
Okay, thank you. Item 5, urgent matters. I haven't got any at all. No. And then item 6 is announced by the chair. I've just got a couple of things really. Congratulations to the Chief Constable on the award of the King's Police Medal. Congratulations. And also congratulations to the Police Commissioner on his appointment as chair of the Forum Policing in Wales. Thank you. And then just, I understand that the Deputy Chief Constable, Richard Davinsky, is retiring before our next meeting. So could you please give him our best regards and thank him for all he's done for North Wales Police. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Item 7 is the minutes, which are pages 3 to 8, and it's to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 30th of January. Can I remind members that the minutes are for approval only and not for discussion at this stage? Is there a proposer and a seconder? Please, proposer. Okay. Oh. Yeah. That's mentioned twice. What's the council? So we'll remember. Okay. And the seconder, please. Thank you. And can I ask members to show their hands if they agree with the minutes? Everybody agrees. Thank you very much. So item 8A, it's an update on actions from the previous meeting. Commissioner or Stephen, do you have any updates on actions from the previous minutes?
Chair, I'll pick that one up. I'll stand to be corrected, but having reviewed the minutes of the last meeting, I think they all relate to the precept discussion. So I'm not aware of any actions that be carried forward to this meeting.
That's fine. Members can bring up any actions from the minutes at this stage if they want. Everybody happy? Okay, thank you. And then item 8B, questions to the Police and Crime Commissioner. In line with the protocol, I asked a supplementary question and there should be no discussion on the questions. However, I noted that one of the answers I got on mental health was asking what the force is doing in terms of mental health and the provision of mental health services. And it said at the end of the question that there was no intention to revisit the matter at that stage. But in view of the announcement by the Commissioner of the Police in London about moving back from the mental health issues. I'm just wondering if there was a further update on that, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thank you for your passing on your congratulations to myself and also to the Chief Constable. I'll let the Chief Constable talk about that operational side of things, but we know that has been recently discussed about right care, right person at the Policing Partnership Board for Wales we had last week, and that's a Humberside model. Then I'll just hand over to the Chief for that, the detail involved in that.
So thank you, Jock. So we are currently looking at the position in relation to the amount of demand that comes into policing for requests for assistance from members of our community that are suffering from mental health crisis. And we already have social workers in the mental health workers within the control room who are able to pinpoint those services to those individuals to prevent that demand from increasing. Whilst over this last year, we've seen some significant demands, other demands on Welsh Ambulance Service. That's meant that the overall demand has gone up in relation to medical episodes per se. So we're doing some work at the moment based on the right care, right person model. That is a academically proven approach in relation to looking at working in partnership. And it is a partnership approach. It's not a single agency approach to look at how we can best deal with that over the year to come. So Nigel Harrison, Chief Super, is currently working with partners to work through the detail, but it will be very much a in partnership approach rather than an independent organisation policing saying this is what we're doing and we're therefore withdrawing services.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you. Moving on now to feedback from member champions. Any? Yes, I haven't had the answers yet, so the supplementary questions have been submitted. Yeah, well, yeah, they're on their way. They're on their way in anyway. Good. So, member champions, if any member champion wishes to say anything in terms of, yeah, Pat then.
I had a long conversation with, and I'm very grateful to the OPCC staff for giving up their time. So pass it on, please. Roads policing, for example, I'm sure you're going to touch on this, Amanda. Break are supporting the funding a caseworker to support following when the FLOs finish their 6-week stint. They will carry on because there is a need, isn't there, for the families after that. It'll take the pressure off the FLOs, and it will be a bilingual service to North Wales. It's being currently advertised on the website. There is staffing that they said was all right. There's going to be break. It's part-time. Conwy County Council are promoting road safety. So is it something called Gwenna Ellis? And then there's going to be some guidance out later this year, but Welsh Government can't do anything until then. Sorry, my notes aren't that good. Then the rural crime, there's going to be a fox hunting review, or that started in January 23, and it's being done by Glyndŵr University, Professor Maddock Jones. And there's going to be 8 recommendations. There's a lot of work done with NFU, rural crime teams, and events being held for farming and cybercrime, Carnarvon, and you met the FUW, yes, Farmers Union Wales. And then Liz Ward, we talked about hate crime. There's lots of challenges about hate crime. It's reduced in line with national levels in North Wales, apart from race hate and anti-Semitism. There was a hate crime awareness week. Was that last week, Andy? Was it a week before? It was right. I thought it was recently, wasn't it? Because I've seen it on Facebook.
Hate crime awareness week is normally around October time.
Sorry, it was Pride you went to last week, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I saw. And then we talked a bit about the mate crime, where someone gets groomed and they take their money. Hate crime satisfaction levels are dropping, and there are 3 officers Western, Eastern and Central. And he had a conference in Conwy Business Centre in May. So which focuses on business care sector. And that was it. All of my two.
Any other member champions? Yeah, none? Yeah.
Sori, diolch. Dwi am siarad yn Gymraeg. Dwi wedi cael 2 gyfarfod, un fy wen ac un arall efo wen a rhian, a lle fuon nhw'n yn niweddaru fi yn rhinwedd fy rôl fel y Victims Champion. Nes i ddysgu am y Criminal Justice Board, y Code of Practice a deuddeg hawl y dioddefwyr, a nes i drio dallt y prosesa mae'r dioddefwyr yn mynd trwydden nhw. Pan ma' nhw a trio gweld pam bod rhei yn tynnu allan pan ma' y broses yn mynd yn ei blaen. Ac ma' hynny'n rhywbeth sydd o ddiddordeb i mi, ac dwi wedi cael yn sicrhau bod y tîm yma'n gwneud y gwaith yn effeithiol, a dwi'n edrych ymlaen i ddysgu mwy ac yn cael mynd ar ymweliadau mwyn cael y teimlad gwirioneddol o sut ma' dioddefwyr yn teimlo ar ôl godda trais, a bod yn ddewr a dod ymlaen i gysylltu fo'r heddlu cyn symud ymlaen i roi tystiolaeth. Da ni'n mynd i fod yn cyfarfod Bob Davies ac dwi yn cael ymweld â canolfan cymorth dioddefwyr yn Llanelwy yn mis Awst, a fedra i mond diolch yn fawr iawn am y gwaith calad ac am eich amser yn niweddaru fi. Diolch.
Thank you, Nan. Anybody else at all? Chris?
You yourself and I have been pursuing aspects of the cases of misconduct and gross misconduct, and have we dealt with within the force, seeking satisfaction to ensure that they're done professionally and robustly. You know, I think after the question that I raised and you yourself resulted from the Sarah Everard case, which is going back a while ago now, really. And since then, of course, there have been some other high-profile cases nationally, which have highlighted the number of cases of misogyny and the aspects of harassment of people by police officers. We've drilled down into the answers we've got. We've had very strong answers from the PSD team and so on to the question, and we drilled down further to understand the mechanism. I think we were fearful or suspect of being soft on cases involving police officers and police officers investigating police officers. But again, we've been given assurances, of course, of the independent involvement in this, and also legal counsel really leading on this, these particular cases. And subsequently, of course, we've had the Chief Constable's report on this following that particular case. So I'll be very much, I think, reassured that these issues have been dealt with robustly, openly and transparently by the force and so on. And again, in cases where they found proven, of course, action is taken. And again, we've seen on the headlines of the local press, the regional press, and some officers have been dismissed and so on as a consequence. So I think we'll be very satisfied that the mechanisms and the ways of dealing with this in the force are robust and transparent. And we're grateful for those reassurances. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. I'd agree with everything you said as well, to be honest. It was comprehensive input that we did have. Thank you very much for that. Thank you. Anybody else at all?
It's only brief because there isn't a lot of finance on the agenda today, but I've met with Kate, and they'll be bringing forward a 6-month monitoring report in September, and I'll meet with her before that to go through that.
That's brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. And the new initiative, We Don't Buy Crime. So over to you, Chief Constable.
Diolch, thank you. So, thank you very much. So it's just an opportunity for me to really just give a very brief overview around residential burglary, but have a look at the bigger recording area of neighbourhood crime, something that really matters to our communities across North Wales. So The reason we're putting this up is because there is a change in the recording rules around burglary. So moving forward from April 2023, the classification of residential burglary changes. Also, if we can stay on that one, is that okay? Stay back on the picture. That's great. That's lovely. It changes, and it means that up until then, if there was a burglary at a premises, that would include sheds, outbuildings. So if you had a lawnmower stolen from a shed in a garden, it would be classed as a burglary. If you had a bike stolen out of a detached garage, that would be classed as a burglary. So all of those things up until April 2023 have been counting as burglaries. Moving forward, the Home Secretary has made changes to the Home Office counting rules, and they will be separated. So a residential burglary will be classed as a break into a property, a premises, a house, and the removal of items from within that. So it's just to make that clarification. The information and the data I'm going to be looking at today with you is going to be pre-April 2023. So it's going to include outbuildings and sheds. Okay, so if we can move to the next slide. So this is just to demonstrate a sort of how we compare, and there we are in green on the left-hand side of the chart, which is a good place to be. So when you look at the forces across England and Wales, and you look at the force that is recording the most on the far right-hand side, you can see that by comparison, we are recording less levels of residential burglary upon the old definition than most of our colleagues across England and Wales, again, which is a good place to be. It's good news for our residents, not complacent about that. And we do a huge amount in terms of prevention to try to make sure that we maintain that position. We move to the next slide. It will show you that, obviously, there we are with a burglary fall in the past 12 months to May of 11.8%. Again, a really good place to be. So we're seeing that increase in terms that fall away in terms of the amount of burglaries we're getting, and that increase in preventative methodology that we're putting around burglaries to make sure that we continue to see those figures going down. We're not in a position, as I say, to be able to demonstrate that against the new definition at the moment. So everything is as per April. When you look at how good we are at detecting crime, and we look at the next slide, you can see our burglary outcomes. And from that 12-month rate, you can see that our detections have gone up. So the amount of people that we are convicting have gone up. And actually, over this last month, it's gone up remarkably, mainly because we charged 8 people with conspiracy to burglary, to commit burglary. And there were a number of offences that were related to that. So whilst that's a good position at the moment, we expect to see that sort of level out over this year. But we're doing well in terms of our most similar group of forces as an average. And you can see that sort of investment in terms of identification of those offenders that cause the most harm, that do the most and the most prolific, is really paying dividends. And we're starting to push that figure up. So at 8.1% at the moment. I'm just going to talk a little bit about neighbourhood crime. So neighbourhood crime is the Home Office definition is burglary, vehicle crime and theft from person. And we are currently an outlier nationally in relation to that, but not in a bad way. We're a positive outlier and one of the only forces that has seen a position of being able to reduce the amount of burglary, vehicle crime and theft from person that's happening out there. So we saw a 10.4% reduction on recorded crime year on year. And over the last 6 months, this has been driven by changes in relation to vehicle crime, theft from person, and to some extent residential burglary. So we are ranked the 3rd lowest, with the lowest ranking in terms of recorded neighbourhood crime. So other forces are currently looking at us to see what we're doing, to see that positive outturn that we're getting. I'm just going to spend a minute or two just talking about vehicle crime, because I think it is, we know that we are interested in burglary, but we know the type of prolific offenders that cause us the most harm in relation to burglary. They're just solely approach us in terms of burglary offences. If there's a handbag on a car seat or something that they can steal, they will do theft from vehicles as well. So we compare very favourably across the country. second lowest in England and Wales for theft from vehicle, second lowest in England and Wales for theft of a vehicle, and third lowest for vehicle interference. So, you know, we are well and truly holding our own on the bottom end of those recording levels, which is where I want us to stay. When you look at robbery, which is the next slide, you will see that we've consistently had those lower rates of robbery, and we have the second lowest rate in England and Wales to March 23. So again, a really positive story. And that to some degree drives the public confidence that we're seeing at the moment. So if we look to the next slide, although there's quite a lot of conversation at the moment around public confidence, you'll have seen the report that Andy Cook HMIC has put out in terms of public confidence hanging by a thread. That's not the picture that we're picking up from our residents here. So the public perception survey conducted between January and February 23, 600 residents across all of our areas, across a huge range in terms of gender, ethnicity, age, and to get that real cross-section, demonstrated that 86% of our public had confidence in us here in North Wales. So again, you know, positive, that's something for us to celebrate. We're putting that back out to our communities, not complacent about that, and continuing to do the hard yards in relation to maintaining that public confidence. One of the areas that I'd really like us or really like you to be aware of, that we are investing time, effort and our resources into, is the We Don't Buy Crime scheme. And Chief Inspector Helen Douglas is here to just give an overview of what that is and how that works. And that's been particularly of interest to our rural communities who have suffered in relation to this type of criminality particularly. So I'm going to hand over to Helen.
Diolch, Chief Constable, thank you. And thanks for the invitation to come along this afternoon. If we just moved on to the first slide, then thanks. Okay, so We Don't Buy Crime initiative is our response to serious and inquisitive crime, those type of offences that Chief Constable's just spoken about. And this is just an illustration of the distinctive branding that comes with the We Don't Buy Crime. So the handprint, which outlines the 5-pronged approach to tackle acquisitive crime, such as burglary, theft, vehicle crime, whilst targeting those who commit those offences. And it's very much the 5-pronged approach is around prevention, so providing proven and evidence-based crime prevention strategies to communities and businesses to improve security and stop further crime. Deter is around showing retailers how to recognise stolen goods and stop criminals making money from stolen property. And I'll come on to a little bit more detail about that in the next couple of slides. Watch is around how we can train businesses and partners to be our eyes and ears, so to raise awareness of exploitation, modern day slavery, and the concerns that are linked with that. And then Catch and Convict's our increased analytical capability to look at trends, working with partners to catch criminals, but Convict is around bringing offenders before the courts. Quite unique to the programme is using forensic property marking called Smart Water, which I'll talk about. So you can see just down the left-hand side, I've just shared with you the overarching objectives of the programme around crime prevention, supporting victims, community cohesion, tackling antisocial behaviour and an efficient, effective service delivery. And what we would want to see in terms of benefits and outcomes for the programme is reducing burglary and other offences around serious and inquisitive crime, increasing our intelligence sharing capabilities with businesses and communities, really the increased opportunity to return stolen property, so where we're forensically marking it, if we maximise the opportunities working with businesses and retailers, second-hand retailers, to try and recover that and return them to the owners, and a community-wide approach to crime prevention, certainly increasing visibility and trust and confidence out in our communities. So next slide, please. Okay, and this is just outlining the 6 unique pillars of work with We Don't Buy Crime. So there are some subsequent slides coming which will give you the detail of the bespoke prevention packs, and I have distributed some leaflets on the table for you to take away and have a read through. So the victim and crime pillar is essentially our response to burglaries, be both residential and commercials, to businesses and vehicle related crime. So we've designed bespoke prevention packs which come in the form of an envelope that our staff are working out and will go and visit a victim of a burglary. And there's some crime prevention literature and the forensic property marking in there. We're committed to cocooning neighbouring properties. So where we see a victim in a residential burglary, staff will be knocking on doors of the neighbouring properties and providing a similar pack without the forensic property marking, but with the UV marking pen to help them become safe. And then supporting local businesses is the work that we're going to be doing with second-hand retailers. So we have done a soft launch already if we don't buy crime. That was towards the end of April around the victims of crime and burglary response. We've just recruited some dedicated PCSOs to the team now who will be aligned out in the communities to our 10 districts and start now focusing on these wider pillars of work. So supporting local businesses around identifying stolen property. They'll be issued with UV pens to try and identify the forensic marking on the property and increasing their awareness and understanding. Safer neighbourhoods work is essentially work with town and parish councils. So out in the communities, staff will be encouraging the town and parish councils to be able to purchase the forensic property marking at a discounted rate because we know that it's strength in numbers in communities. So where we can canvass a community and residents to mark their property, we will support them with installing metal signage, street furniture, similar to your neighbourhood watch signs you would have seen previously, but you know, criminals beware, and it's a strong deterrent. The undercover work is our increased capability to deploy some covert assets. So where we're seeing spikes and trends in maybe bikes being stolen in communities, for example, we'll be able to do some undercover work to try and target that and catch criminals. Fuel station work, this is twofold actually. So it's where we will be looking to reduce the offences where people fail to pay for their fuel, so making off without payments. So there'll be deterrent signage and reminders on the pumps and at stations about have you paid for your fuel. But we also recognise that fuel stations are often a location of vulnerability for exploitation. So we'll be doing some training and awareness raising with staff and employees around the associated harm, which links into the final tab there around recognising the signs of crime. So that is our offer to businesses, community groups around the associated harm training, criminal exploitation. So if we move on, thank you. So these next few slides really is just an illustration of the prevention pack and the literature that comes within it. So a burglary victim will get a support pack, which is what you can see there, which contains a letter acknowledging that they've been a victim of burglary and some crime prevention advice, a leaflet around top tips on home security. We encourage to register property, individual items of property with Immobilise. There's a small leaflet in the pack around that. There's a window sticker that they can place as a deterrent on their windows. And then also the forensic marking you can see in the bottom right hand corner there, the smart water. So it's only a very small tube, but it actually can mark up around 80 to 100 items of property. And all residents need to do is to register the unique reference number that's on the tube with their name and address, and then they can mark as much property as they like. They don't have to register individual items. And it's invisible to the naked eye, so you can't see the smart water. But when all our officers are issued with UV torches, they can scan it and it illuminates green. So that's the idea around it. If we move on to the next slide. This is the prevention pack, so very similar, but prevention because this is the pack that neighbours of a victim will get. So as I said, there's no smart water, but a UV marking pen which illuminates in the same way. Similar letter and same top tips on home security there. And then move on to the next slide, thanks. This slide is now an illustration of our offer to rural community and our farming community. We know that we've got in the region of 6,500 farms across North Wales, which is Welsh Government data. And our commitment through the programme is to visit every farm across North Wales over the next 3 years, whether they've been a victim of crime or not, and offer them the We Don't Buy Crime Prevention Pack. So in that includes some crime prevention advice in the letter. There's window sticker, there's deterrent metal signage that you can see there that can be installed either at the end of the barn or at the perimeter of the farm grounds. There's stickers for in vehicles, advocating for police to stop if they see a vehicle with a sticker in between lines of darkness, and some security booklet, security checklist, and a small gummed pad for out and about in the fields to note anything suspicious. There is smart water in that pack and also UV marking pens. So I'll come on to the statistics in terms of how far our reach has been since the end of April, but really positive feedback so far from our rural community. Just move on to the next slide. So this is just an illustration of our performance data to date. It is being recorded quite innovatively on a mapping system within the force. And you can just see there our footprint across North Wales so far. So we have reached out to 344 farms since the end of April, cocooned 335 neighbouring properties of victims, and supported 77 victims of residential burglary. Okay, next slide. And then these are just some images of our engagement out in the community. So this was an event actually over in Wrexham, an allotment site where we were seeing a slight increase in some shed breaks at the site and tools being stolen. So we took the gazebo down there, branded, engaged with site owners and offered some of the forensic marking packs and signage to put up on the sheds, which you can see on the next slide, please. Okay. So there we go, just some engagement with the local site owners, plot owners, and a sign on one of the shed doors there. And then the next slide, this is just again engagement with the rural crime team, doing lots with Farmers Union and Welsh Government liaison officers. So this was actually at one of the marts where they were canvassing some of the local farmers and sharing some of the prevention packs and signage. And then the very last slide is just to share with you, share with you what you will be seeing out and about in the communities to increase our visibility with the wraparound and branded vehicles there. So again, the distinctive handprint, bilingual messaging on the vehicles. So hope to have one for each of the dedicated PCSOs. Happy to take any questions between myself and the Chief Constable.
Thank you. Chris?
Very interesting. The old saying was that the best defence against crime was a nosy neighbour. And, you know, we had neighbourhood watches quite extensively across North Wales. This, which you are making reference today, is a police initiative, really. Does neighbourhood watch still exist? Are they still out there? Are they still active? You know, we had a very active owl group in Flintshire. They were very, very prominent. You know, they were on the market stalls and so on, and selling things like markers and so on. That disappeared a while ago because funding, I think, dried up and disappeared. But you know, I'm not sure really how many functional neighbourhood watch schemes are still available and whether we actually promote these. You know, because again, this is an intense pressure on police time again. And you know, we appreciate the work that you're doing, but you can't be everywhere and do everything across the whole of the region. So I'm just wondering what help there is still out there from groups like Neighbourhood Watch who can cooperate and work effectively with the police and with the community to ensure that these particular crimes spotted straight away and nipped in the bud, as it were. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you. So there are pockets still of neighbourhood watch out across the region, and where they do exist, we are linking in with them. So I'm engaged with and have presented similar to each of the community safety partnership boards so far. So certainly over in the Flintshire area, we know that we've got support from community wardens there as part of Still a Watch scheme. So what we don't want to do is duplicate efforts, but equally maximise where people can support. Similar to Neighbourhood Watch, in actual fact, we've got support from local authorities around their contact with farms in terms of site inspections, in terms of food. So again, where they're going out to do inspections as a local authority on farms, so I've offered to support again with some of the handout of the preventative material. Pass over to the PCC.
Yeah, mic's on. Yeah, thanks, Chris, for the question. Neighbourhood Watch hasn't gone away, but there was a refresh of it around about 2 or 3 months ago now. So it's very much there in the background, and I think you agree it has seemed to have dropped off the boil a bit. But let's not forget it. It was only about 18 months ago where there was a launch of community alerts as well, where we can sign up to that, and that to me is a far more interactive way of communicating with our communities, because we can reply back kind of to what officers are saying there as well, and it keeps that locality as well, so more localized as well. But we just need to be, I think what with the We Don't Buy Crime initiative would be is complementing what's already out there. If not, it's probably leading the way really and spearheading it and driving that forward, but using those other methods of support in the background as well.
Thanks, Helen. First of all, would we come through you if we wanted to negotiate maybe an event, a community event?
Yeah, so we are on the North Wales Police public website under the campaigns. There's information there, and we've got a North Wales email address, wedon'tbuycrime@northwalespolice.co.uk. So yeah, either to me personally or to the team email. That's great.
Okay. And the other one is I'm just throwing this in only because something happened to a friend of mine at the weekend where she was indecently or sexually assaulted in a pub. And the offender was just asked to leave the pub. And she was in such shock. And I said, well, why didn't you report it to the police? And she said, I wasn't sure what to do. And I'm not talking about somebody vulnerable. She's not a vulnerable person. She might be after this for a short period of time. So is it something you might be able to touch on? Because you talk about keeping safer neighbourhoods. Is it something you might be able to consider?
Yeah, so the Safer Neighbourhoods work is predominantly around the response and crime prevention for burglaries.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if there was some way you could get that little message up, but I don't know, would you want that?
Yeah, thanks, Pat. And first and foremost, I'd like to see if your friend's okay, because that's my initial thought, making sure that they're okay. I can see where this could fit in, but I think it would fit in better within licensing with local authorities as well. Perhaps there's more work that can be done in between the force and the local authorities, and especially regarding the licensing.
I was just thinking, because it says safer community, some people might just want to hear that one statement. That's my point, really.
Yeah, definitely, Pat. No, we can certainly pick that up. This particular scheme is aiming at driving down acquisitive crime, but it's also around mobilising those eyes and ears to let us know what's happening in communities like your friend who's had that horrendous experience. So, we would want to therefore be working with, as the Commissioner says, our licensees, particularly to make sure that they don't just deal with this by way of you can leave the pub, but actually get in touch with us so that we can look at bringing that person to book for the offences that they've committed and supporting, the victim in relation to it. So we can pick that up separately if that's okay, Pat.
Because the chances are it might not be the first time, and it might certainly not be the last time. Right, okay.
Okay, thanks. None, first we'll come to you, Louise. None.
Diolch yn fawr. O'n i'n clywed chi'n sôn am Public Perception Survey a bod na 600 o ymatebion wedi dod I mewn. Mae hynny'n swnio yn nifer fechan I fi o gysidro maint Gogledd Cymru. Sut oeddech chi'n teimlo am faint o ymatebion a gafwyd?
So, Diolch, thank you. So we do that on a quarterly basis, so 600 per quarter, so that we're able to keep a rolling identification of how many people are responding to us. And So we're able to make sure that we keep on that trajectory in terms of that positivity. So it's 600 as a one-off, yes, I'd agree, is very low in comparison to our population. But when you do that on a quarterly basis over, you know, a few years, you start to get that accumulative understanding of where your communities are at.
Diolch, ie, mae hynna'n ateb da. Dwi'n falch o ddeud, dwi wedi dod ar draws mwy nag un person sydd yn ffermwyr ac yn hapus iawn o fod wedi derbyn yr beiros liquid ma ac yn gwych o beth ac yr arwyddion i fynd fyny. Felly ar Ynys Môn dwi'n falch iawn bod dwi'n meddwl FUW wedi bod yn gweithio hefo yr heddlu cymunedol y cefn gwlad lle. So oedd hynna'n neis i glywed, bod fi wedi clywed gen y aelodau'r cyhoedd a clywed chi rwan yn deud na mond ers mis Ebrill da chi wrthi. Felly llongyfarchiadau dwi'n falch iawn o glywed hynny. Be arall? Clywed chi'n sôn am y safer neighbourhoods. Nage, sori, gynta, victims burglary, mynd â pecyn i'r cymdogion. Mae hynny'n rhywbeth dwi'n meddwl sydd yn poeni llawer iawn o gymdogion. Wrth gwrs, os di rywun wedi cael bwrgleriaeth mewn pentre bychan, mae yna yn ymhentra fy ward di yn ddiweddar. Ac wrth gwrs, mi oedd y cymdogion i gyd wedyn yn tueddu feddwl o pwy sy'n nesa. Felly mae'n neis ofnadwy bod chi yn mynd atyn nhw ac yn cynnig cymorth iddyn nhw hefyd. Achos mae hynny'n bwysig, mae pobl yn poeni. Ac o ran tebyg i be oedd Pat di ofyn mewn ffordd, safer neighbourhoods, oeddech chi'n sôn bod modd i'r cyngor cymdeithas ella wneud rhyw gais i chi ddod i mewn, neu ia, dyna fysa'n digwydd? So, y cyngor cymdeithas yn gwneud cais i'ch adran chi i ddod i mewn, gwneud cyflwyniad, ac ella bysa ni'n gallu cynnal rhyw ddigwyddiad?
Yeah. Absolutely perfect. Yeah, so as I said, we've got 7 PCSOs aligned across North Wales so far. That's not to say the sort of the 3 districts that we haven't appointed that we're not still doing work in there. Just by way of example, we were at an event, an engagement event, and one of the Wrexham community councillors approached and was interested in the work, who have set up community alert as part of their community, and were looking to how they could enhance engagement. So took our details, more than happy to come along to any of your meetings, residents group meetings, share further information around the Safe Neighbourhood strand and how we can support you.
Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Great, diolch. I was thinking about this agenda item last night when I was woken up by a bump in the middle of the night, and I was on my own with the children, and you kind of wake up and you think, what was that? And it goes through your mind. Is that a human? Is that someone trying to break in, or is it a baby seagull falling off the roof? There's burglaries and there's burglaries. You know, there's shed breaks, which are really annoying, and you're out from work and you come back and your bike bean's nicked, and there's a bump in the night and a window smashed and you're on your own with young kids, and they're completely different. So I suppose the statistics are great that we have very low crime rates anyway within North Wales, but I suppose I want to be reassured that those burglaries where it's had a real impact on the people in that house, where it's middle of the night, where you're sleeping upstairs, and you know they've come in, they've stolen something, they've gone, or even worse, there's a slight confrontation, that we are responding to those quickly. So when the 999 goes in, even though it's a burglary, that is responded to. Even if they've run off and they've left, so they're not exactly there, versus I accept if my bike's been nicked, I accept that I would do some work myself to see if I could find it, and I would 101 it the next morning or when I came home from work. But I need that reassurance, I suppose, that those bumps in the night, that the police officers will be there even if the person's left the premises. Thank you.
I can absolutely give you that assurance. If we have a burglary in progress come in, dialed into us on the 9s, it's an immediate response. I can give some very good examples of when we have had an immediate response to it and we've caught the offenders and recovered property, and they've been remanded to prison. That's That's what we join policing to do, is to catch those people that are, you know, where they shouldn't be, doing what they shouldn't be doing, and bring them to justice for it. What I would say is we have very, very few burglaries that are in the middle of the night where people take that opportunity because the stakes are high in terms of getting, you know, sort of caught in relation to that. People generally look for vacant premises during the course of the day. And we know that from having conversations with our offenders who do commit these types of offences. Doesn't mean that it doesn't happen, but it does mean that if we do get anything like that come in, we are an immediate response to that. So if I can just give you that assurance.
Just one question in terms of. Oh, sorry, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. No
Carry the
problem. Yeah, just to, as well as the Chief Constable giving that operational view of things, you know, there is still services that we commission, like the Victim Help Centre, probably one of the first in England and Wales to have such a victim support place. So to try and give that assurance as well for anybody who's unfortunate to get and have experiences that terrible crime, because though it's quite low level, it just has a massive impact. And like you said, the example you've given there, I can certainly relate to that, because we're not overlooked at the back. So if anything goes off behind our house, you know, it does heighten your senses, doesn't it? So I can understand that. But there is commission services as well there that people are able to use, and there is also the Victims Code of Practice as well, which I'm very much pushing to make sure that everybody is aware as they can be of that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I've just got one question in relation to, you said there's undercover work. Does that include the role of informants? Do you use informants when carrying out that work?
Not so much necessarily with this programme. It is a capability that we have in force. So, you know, where people want to share information, absolutely. You know, we've got the systems, process and channels to manage that. This is around us really working with communities and being able to respond by, you know, deploying sort of covert assets to try and recover property that's been stolen and put those offenders to justice.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Chief Constable.
Yeah, so just to add to that, really, we have a very good tasking and coordination program of work ongoing. If we see a spike in anything, then we are likely to task into our covert human intelligence source handling team and try to get information back in around that. But we use it as part of that sort of bigger holistic approach, if that's helpful.
That's brilliant. Thank you. I've just got sorry, anybody else? No, I've just got a couple of questions in relation to what happens when you've actually detected burglaries. Do you still use offences taken into consideration at all?
Yeah, so I'm having a national discussion around this at the moment because the sentencing guidelines changed in relation to taking into consideration. So just so everybody's clear on what I'm talking around. So it's where somebody is identified with the evidence in relation to 2 or 3 burglaries, and then when we talk to them, they want to tell us about other burglaries that they committed, of which we've got no evidence for. They want to admit those so that can be written off as they are sentenced in relation to those ones for which there are evidence. So we do use them. We do. However, the position that used to be, it's not as an attractive proposition for the individual to admit them now as it used to be, because it can add to their sentence and it can be detrimental to them in terms of their sentencing. My ongoing conversation is with the Home Office and the Sentencing Guideline Council around this particular area. I think it's really important for us to understand what we lose in relation to that, because we also lose the intelligence that individual brings us, which again is really important in understanding their profile of offending. So we do use them, but probably not as much as used to be used. And that's part of the reason why, but still very keen to make sure that our staff across North Wales understand how to do it, understand where to use it properly, and understand the importance of it in terms of giving that confidence to victims. So many years ago, I was a victim of burglary. The offender who committed my offence was dealt with by way of taken into consideration, and actually it was hugely sort of for me it was hugely reassuring to know that the individual had been caught, I wasn't so much worried about the fact that they were going to get extra on their sentence or whatever it may be. But I wanted to know that the police knew who it was, and that if anything else happened, they'd got the identification of that individual. So I do think it's important for victims to have that reassurance as well.
Thank you. And then leading on from that, then once they are convicted and sent down, do we still do prison write-offs?
Well, the same sort of principle applies really in terms of taking into considerations and prison write-offs. And, you know, so those sorts of interviews after conviction, again, has been something that has dropped off over time, and something that I think is really important from the point of view of understanding the prolific nature of that individual. So our integrated offender management team would pick that side of that work up in order to understand, when that person's released, what are the chances that they're going to be rehabilitated, and if they're not, you know, we're looking to reconvict, because if they're not interested in rehabilitating themselves, we don't want more people falling victim to them. So we'll be looking for that evidence to convict them, and part of that is understanding what their MO is, what their modus operandi is, how they work, how they tackle individuals within a community, and how we can best tackle them.
Thank you very much, Chief Constable. Any other questions from the panel at all? Okay. Can I thank you for coming here today and giving us that presentation? Very, very useful and illuminating, I think, is probably the word. Thank you. Moving on now then to the item 10A, which is the annual report from the North Wales Police and Crime Commissioner. This is the item for the Commissioner and Stephen to take on.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just move the report as read, and happy to take any questions members may have.
No, on the report at all? Yes, Chris. Can you put your mic on, Chris, please? Sorry.
Sorry, I was just wondering where antisocial behaviour fits in this into this plan. You know, I know it was mentioned initially. Is this just recognised as part of the regular day job of the force? There's anecdotal evidence, I think, you know, across the region that there's been an increase in antisocial behaviour, probably stemming from the COVID pandemic and the lockdown, and, you know, children not being in school. You know, again, we're getting reports of misbehaviour in school and exclusions and so on and so forth, because, you know, children have not been subject to any kind of discipline, some children anyway, in the past few years, and that's having an effect, I think, really, in terms of antisocial behaviour in the community. I can't see any particular reference to that here, and it's probably the wrong place, but if it is, you know, I think it might be useful to have a report on that for the subsequent week, because again, I think there is concern about this out there.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Bethel, for the question. And I think it's sort of a bit I think it does. There is an intrinsic link there with what we've got in the annual report to antisocial behaviour, although it's not as specific as you may like, and I understand that. I'm happy to bring that forward to another meeting. But there's other things there that that are mentioned that are helping divert children away, especially regarding antisocial behaviour diversionary schemes such as youth sheds, which have been awarded some funding through the Innovate to Grow fund. Other examples given where we supported a youth centre through Your Community, Your Choice in Plan Vice there. So there's other examples that we can give, but we can pick it up if you want more detail, no problem at all. And probably worth a mention to try and plug our fortnightly newsletter, which gives really good events that have taken place that I've attended and supported throughout that time, and I'd encourage members to sign up to that as well.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Stephen, did you want to go in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks for the question, Chris. Just a couple of points to build on what the Commissioner said, which I obviously agree with. But, you know, you read the Commissioner's Police and Crime Plan, and it makes clear that neighbourhood policing is the cornerstone, is the foundation of everything. So, the primary objective of that neighbourhood policing team is to tackle antisocial behaviour. So it is a priority. It may not be explicitly referenced within the plan, but it is a priority. Another point specifically regarding the annual report before you, we highlight the tremendous success we've had over the last 12 months in securing funding through the Safer Streets Fund from the Home Office, and page 4, I think it is, of the report, or the pack at least, talks about where some of that funding has gone over the last 12 months. The vast majority of that funding is aimed at tackling antisocial behaviour in those communities as well. So just to give you some further assurance, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you. John, do you have a question? I'm sorry, Steve, sorry.
Thanks. Just a question in terms of the excellent figures presented in terms of reduction in overall crime down 5.9%, which is commendable. This seems to be like, is this a cherry picked list of crimes? Because what about things like to do with drugs or drink driving, or is there a full list in this one? Or am I looking at the wrong thing?
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
So it's not cherry picked. Well, I wouldn't say that, but there are other crime types, obviously, that have not been included. The stats that we tend to bring to this meeting are the ones that focus on the policing crime plan priorities. That's not to say that, if you're interested in crime stats in other particular areas, obviously you've heard from the chief today regarding stats around burglary dwelling. If there's any crime types that you're particularly interested that are not normally included in our updates, then we're more than happy to have that discussion outside of the meeting.
Okay, that's fine. So you've linked this list of crimes to your sort of priority.
Correct. Yes.
So okay.
Yes.
I understand. So at some point I could ask to say what is drug offences look like, what do drink offences look like?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. And they would be linked to the drink driving, for example, road safety
Well, indeed, that's
is a
what I was
priority.
thinking. I was
So
quite
yeah.
interested to see road safety is a thing, and yet we don't talk about drink driving, which I think should got a gap.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nigel?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Commissioner, a few questions if I can regarding road safety. So obviously the Welsh Government are bringing in the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit in September. So I imagine that's to make roads safer. So just a few questions really. As an authority, how will we enforce this, and will there be any grace period initially where we just give a warning? How will we enforce it? Are we looking to taking extra resources on? I'm just conscious, obviously, with North Wales, we depend a lot on tourism. So I imagine, obviously, it's going to be very well documented and broadcast in Wales itself. But if people coming across the border for tourism or work, where they're doing 30 and then coming to a 20 zone, it's going to be a bit of a shock to them. So what's our policy on that, please, first of all?
Yeah, thank you, Nigel. This was brought up again at Policing Partnership Board for Wales last week. Quite operational, I'd say. So I'll just hand over to the Chief Constable for the fuller answer and how it's going to be. There's got to be a lot of educational pieces of work going on before the date of the rollout.
Adiok, thank you, Commissioner. So we have the 20-mile-an-hour areas that are to be designated by local authorities. So that will be areas that are identified and deemed to be necessary to move from a 30 to a 20. And my approach is going to be one of deploying my resources in the area of the highest harm. So that's where I want to see our physical policing assets being placed. So if it's an area where we've had killed or serious injuries on the road in a 30 that becomes a 20, then I'll be interested in looking at those areas. If it is that somebody is travelling through that area, and we've set some identified sort of limits in relation to it, say, for instance, under 25 miles an hour, we'll be looking at words of advice. If it's up to 30 miles an hour, we'll be looking at a there and then education programme. And I'm working with GoSafe, Welsh Government, and with my officers to identify who's going to deliver that. Also part of that, we're looking at the fire service being part of that education programme as well. If it's over 30, then I think, that's a position that it becomes untenable in relation to in relation to speeding. What I would say is one of the areas that I am most concerned about at the moment are those that are coming onto our roads and losing their life, finding themselves in a position where they are way in excess of speed limits, or are, you know, for instance, our motorcyclists that are coming into the area. So that's where I want to prioritise my resources, and always will be where the highest harm is that I can identify. That doesn't mean that we'll be ignoring the 20 mile an hour, but I want to see the evidence base in relation to where I prioritise resources across there. And, you know, I would also say that I spent the day actually on Saturday in Bristol. The majority of Bristol is a 20 mile an hour area. So there are quite big areas within England that are 20s. You know, some of this comes down to road design as well. Within those areas, it's quite difficult to travel over 20 miles an hour because of the road design and the way that things have been put together. So, you know, again, there's some additional work that we can do over time to design out the ability to be able to exceed 20 mile an hour, especially in residential areas. And I think, you know, very much, you know, nobody, I can't imagine anybody being against 20 mile an hour outside schools, you know, or areas where people are particularly vulnerable. But there's a degree of education and grace that needs to go alongside that, so we don't find people, you know, at this time where, you know, things are really difficult in our communities, you know, cost of living crisis, and people are finding themselves with additional fines and points on their licence. So we want to take a very, very cautious approach and work with our communities in order to educate properly and to be able to support people through this quite significant change.
Nigel?
Yeah, and just come back with a supplementary, and then I've got another question afterwards, if I can, please, Chair. Yeah, thank you for that, Chief Constable. So we talk about education. Is that something that we're looking at North Wales Police level, or are we looking at Welsh Government level, or will this be left down to local authorities?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Williams. And I think this is where, for me, that the messaging's been quite muddied, in my opinion. It was being led by Welsh Government, working with policing and local authorities. We're there as a partner in this rollout, and a broadly supportive partner of that. And this is where I think we've got to be very clear on the messaging surrounding that the police are there to enforce the law, and Welsh Government passed that law now, and this is the process that we're going through at this time. But this is where we've got to be extremely careful on making sure that messaging is right. And I'll just hand over to the Chief Constable.
So certainly been working with colleagues across Wales in the other three forces, with GoSafe that provides the provision across Wales in terms of road safety enforcement and across, you know, the four forces, with Welsh Government and with colleagues in the fire service, in order to have a partnership approach in relation to the education programme, because it's not just around policing, it is also around colleagues in fire service and that wider education that should take place in relation to giving people the facts to allow them to think about speed and to think about the consequences of speed. So very much, as I see it, being a partnership approach, you know, and very much needs that communications message around it now that needs to be led by each of the local authorities as they identify the road networks that they are looking at bringing down in terms of speed.
Just to come back as well, Nigel, if that's okay, you know, road safety is in my policing crime plan, and I know I just want to recognise that it is a serious matter to me and to everybody in this room, and to panel members, and none more so than to the Vice Chair as well, where we've been working extremely closely with Pat and with Joe regarding Olivia. So it is something that we're really passionate about, but we are, as the Chief Constable has said, is about working with partners and around that educational piece.
Thank you, Chair.
Hang on, Nigel, do you want to come back? I'll come to you, Pat.
Yeah, thank you. Just my second question. It's a hot topic at the moment, is electric bikes as well, while we're on road safety. Obviously, we're all aware in the recent press of two instances, one in Cardiff, one in Manchester, where youths died on electric bikes. I know there's a big difference between electric bikes as a bicycle and electric motorbikes. What's North Wales Police's stance on this, please, regarding bikes? Because Obviously, there's two sides to look at this. Obviously, the safety of the bike users, but then the perception of the public as well is that the police are actually scared at the moment to pursue MD on bikes, and they feel that they're just getting away with it now. So I know it's a difficult topic at the moment, and there's a lot of from our side from the police where to pursue, which could cause an accident. But the perception of the public is also that there's something we're too scared to touch, and they're getting away with it as well.
Thank you. So, so there are two types, aren't there, we're looking at here, of electric bikes and electric scooters. So that, and the reason I make the two differences is because the legislation is different for each one. Electric scooters should not be ridden anywhere other than private land with the express permission of the landowner. Electric bikes can be ridden up to a certain power voltage in relation to that particular bike. But we're also interested in, and I've been doing some national work in where bikes and scooters are used in the commission of offences, because certainly some of our built up cities, not in North Wales, but some of our built up cities, Greater Manchester, Merseyside, London, we do see scooters and bikes being used to commit other offences. But also we see it as part of antisocial behaviour. And we also see it in terms of the danger that it causes to the person riding the bike or the scooter and to the member of the public. So we're currently reviewing all of our practices, processes and protocols in relation to this area, having had a very in-depth conversation with my counterpart in South Wales, and also keeping an eye on that GMP position, so that we've got some very clear guidance in relation to our staff should they be faced with that situation. But again, we're back into key is the education of young people who feel that it is okay to get on these bikes and scooters and feel that they aren't going to be dealt with for it. We've got to be clear in relation to both of those areas. So very much on our mind at the moment. It is a very hot topic. You're absolutely right. And something that I'm working with the team on at the moment.
So just for clarity, Chief Constable, so at the moment, there is no policy as such for these bikes, because they are plaguing communities at the moment. So our policy at the moment is it just to observe and not engage? Is that what you're saying at the moment?
No, I think each officer will make an assessment in relation to a number of different factors: the road, the individual that's riding, whatever it is they're riding, how many other people are around, the danger they're presenting, whether they're known, whether they can identify them by a different means. So the officers, it's actually the officers that are on the street at that moment who are faced with a difficult set of decisions to make. And I want to give them the support in relation to policies and processes. So they are out there making those difficult decisions on a daily basis. We are making sure that we support them properly in being able to do that.
Can I just comment, Chair? Yeah. I'm pleased that the Chief Constable said that those discussions are being held at a national level, because to me, there's no level of consistency either, because I've seen where e-scooters are used in York, when I visited York, and they've got like little park places where you can just park there, go off, do a bit of shopping, get us another one, and off you go. And there's for me, there's too much. There's no level of consistency in what could be used in what area, and I think that doesn't particularly help. But comforted to know that the Chief Constable's having those conversations at a national level to identify that, so we have some very clear guidance and we'll be able to clear that up. Thank you.
Edgar? Okay.
Ie, chyfo efo'r y ddau feic wan, os ar rywun cael ei ddal yn torri cyfraith efo'r beics, beth sy'n digwydd i'r beics? Yn nhw'n cael ei crysio, ta fe?
Diolch, thank you. So you're asking if the bike sees, what do we do with them?
Yeah.
So at the moment, the individual has to be able to claim those back, but show that they are lawfully in possession of them. And there is quite a difficulty here because bikes are being sold quite lawfully, but individuals can't ride them anywhere other than a private place if it's a scooter. So if it's a scooter, that's the situation. So we need to be able to be sure that it's that individual's scooter and bike, and a lot of them don't get claimed after we seize them. And in that instance, we end up disposing of them, selling them basically, or disposing of them if they're not safe to be out on the street.
But to me, by selling them, you're increasing the problem.
Well, not
You know, if you
particularly,
crush
no.
them-
If it's an electric bike, for instance, if it's an electric bike and it's being sold properly,
Yeah.
and electric bikes, that it's not illegal to have an electric bike. You know, lots and
Understand
lots
that.
of people ride e-bikes quite properly and lawfully. We're interested in the criminality in relation to them. But we wouldn't sell a problem back into the community. We'd take a view in relation to that. And if it wasn't appropriate, then they'd be destroyed.
No, yeah.
Okay, Alan?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's just following on from what Nigel said about the electric bikes and scooters. In my area around Abergele on the North Wales coast, it's not just electric, it's petrol engined bikes. We've had some horrendous problems around there with gangs of youths riding in public parks, on the promenades. You might be aware of it. But the impression I'm getting is the police can't engage. They have to work on intelligence of where the bikes are being stored. It seems to have calmed down recently. I've not spoken to our local officers, but that's certainly a major issue in our area. And again, the difficulty, as I see it, goes back to the old saying, if you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If you don't engage with them where they can't be taken off the bikes by whatever means, and one of them's injured doing that, the other side of that coin is if somebody use their riding these things absolutely horrendously dangerously in and out of traffic, they suddenly lose control and the bike plows into people on the pavements and worst case scenario kills them. Then it's going to be a case of, well, the police weren't doing anything. So I understand the difficulty you have, but I really do think there needs to be better terms of engagement for the police to actually stop these bikes. I think Wrexham have recently got 2 off-road bikes where they can pursue. Now, my understanding is for an officer to be able to ride on those bikes, they have to be in traffic, a member of the traffic division, and have to take an advanced course. It'd be good if officers, more forces can do that. And those bikes, all areas could do that. And then the bikes could be moved around to where they're best needed. Well, I would suggest there's probably not enough trained officers to do that at the moment. So that's something I'd like to see brought to the fore. So you can actually engage with them and I'm sure they can be chased down without any serious issue. I know your officers have to make an on-site decision there and then, but if they're in a public park and there's nobody else around, then they should be able to bring these bikes down. I'd like to see something along those lines.
Thank you. Yeah, so we do quite a lot of operations around off-road bikes. I think that's probably, what you're talking about there in terms of the petrol-driven bikes that are being used and driven either dangerously on the road, in which we'll look to prosecute them for the offences which they are committing, or off-road, in which they are causing a huge amount of damage and also disorder and distress to people. And we do quite a lot of operations around that. Part of the national the All Wales Rural Crime Strategy is around that particular area, and we do use drones, we do use all of our capability to try and identify those individuals and those bikes, remove them and crush them. Because obviously that is again a problem in terms of, as I said before, in terms of destroying them. But yes, an ongoing issue, one which we have to rely on our officers on the ground to make decisions on in relation to what's safe and what's not. Take your point in relation to officers being trained in terms of riding off-road bikes. They're not particularly road to policing officers. They're officers that have had an additional course to be able to ride bikes, the off-road bike capability that we've got. And we'll look at that to see whether or not there's a need for that in other areas. So no, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. I'm just thinking then that we know of Operation Snap as well regarding regarding driving offences, and there could be perhaps that's an opportunity where that could be used to tackle the issues you mentioned there, because it's not just Abigail. I know it happens in Mold in my area as well across North Wales. So perhaps there could be an opportunity where OpSnap could be explored to tackle that.
Anything that could be used to reduce it would be very helpful. Something I heard the other day is that the electric motorbikes now in some of the cities, there's been instances where somebody legitimately riding one will stop at the lights and next thing they'll be set upon and the bike will be taken for use in crime. Not sure if you're aware of that, but that's something that came to my attention just the other day.
No, so certainly I'm aware of that. And, you know, when I was referring earlier to scooters and EV bikes being used in crime, that is exactly the same in relation to motor scooters. The Metropolitan Police have particularly had an issue with that. And we've worked with them, certainly I have as the National Inquisitive Crime Lead, to look at how we can deter that, reduce it. Certainly it's an issue. We're not seeing it in North Wales at this moment in time, but it's something that we're very aware of. I'm doing a national problem profile in relation to it at the moment, so we can work with suppliers, you know, with manufacturers to see how we can reduce this, because obviously that's a different key. Legislating would be another area. So, you know, the legislation is different in relation to scooters and EV bikes and being able to ride them.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Pat, did you have a question?
Amanda, just going back to road deaths, you're involved in Operation Edward, which is every day without a road death. Is that right? Is that still ongoing? Because we've had within a sort of a 6-mile radius of where we live, we've had 2 deaths in the last 4 days, road deaths.
Yeah, so we are part and, you know, participate in Operation Edward, and any road traffic collision that results in a death is an absolute tragedy for the family, you know, of that individual that's left behind, and for other people that are involved in it as well. We're looking through, and each time we have one of those, we do quite a lot of work around the sites to make sure that we've got the speed enforcement right in relation to there, that we are upping our presence in relation to that area, but we also look at the contributory factors in relation to it, because, you know, if it's the sort of, you know, the fatal 5, you know, sort of seat belts, drink, drugs, mobile phone use, etc., we're really actively targeting that. But sometimes it's driver error, sometimes it's other factors. So we're trying to understand that from a North Wales perspective. So we've got all of our assets that are properly trained to be able to deal with this in the right place, which is why I made the comment in relation to the 20 area. What I will be doing is looking at the data and putting our staff in the place where we've got the highest harm, where we're seeing lives lost, and where we want to really get road users to think about the speed that they're travelling, or any other factor that's contributing towards that.
Trouble is, you can't be everywhere, can you? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Can I just refer? Sorry, Chris, go on.
Yeah, I just want to refer to page 12 and page 13, where reference is made to sexual violence and to rape in particular. I've been reading recently about the Justice Scoreboard published by the government, England and Wales, and it mentions the fact that under 1% of reported cases of rape actually get to conviction in court, which is deplorable. It's abysmal, in fact, isn't it, really? And of course, you know, I appreciate what is happening in North Wales, up such area, and the SARC accreditation and so on. I think SARC was set up several years ago, wasn't it, in terms of the North Wales Police. So, you know, we're endeavouring to do our best here, but, you know, obviously there are faults in the criminal justice system in dealing with these particular cases. I believe it could take anything up to 817 days, that's 240 years, for a case to come to court, by which time many individuals who made the allegations in the first place have cried off. You know, they don't get any break from this until it's been dealt with in court. So it just dragged it out, doesn't it, further? So, you know, many people actually give up on the system long before it ever reaches court, you know. It's pretty deplorable, really. And again, I think our figures are down, really, in terms of reported rape cases, if I've read the documents correctly. But I'm
8.1%.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not sure, you know, whether that indicates a reduction in the number of these particular cases. Personally, I don't think so. It's just a case of the people being reluctant to report it because they have no faith in the system. Nothing to do with North Wales Police, nothing to do with the Commission and so on. It's a national issue which needs to be dealt with effectively. And again, you know, I believe, you know, there are huge differences in the reporting of this. I think The charge rate, I think, in Surrey is 1.3%, in Durham it's 8.2%. You know, I'm just wondering what our particular charge rate is and so on. But you know, I think it's something we need to look at again. And obviously, we need national answers to this particular issue and problem. And I think we need to be pursuing this really from all quarters. But you know, obviously, we need to be doing our level best really here in North Wales to ensure that these cases are brought to the courts as speedily as possible. And again, you know, the experiences of those people who've actually been through the system, I think, is indicative in this particular respect. I was talking to a former colleague, for example, recently was given evidence in a case which happened many, many years ago. You know, she went to court with the victim, and you know, they were sitting in the courtroom, in the waiting room, with the perpetrator, you know, and with the family, dirty looks across the room, and so on and so forth, loud comments being made, etc., etc. You know, who would put themselves through that at the end of the day? We need to look at this more and more effectively in dealing with these cases. It's horrendous, really, that they dealt with in this particular fashion. And again, there's no surprise that the numbers are dropping and the number of cases that we get to court and convictions are so deplorable, to say the least.
Thank you, Chris. In fact, my question was about rape as well, so I'll just ask that at the same time, if I may. I mean, it's down 8.1% to 733. Is this data broken down into specific categories? For example, do we know how many of these were stranger rapes and how many were offender, where the victim and offender were known? Because obviously this will have an effect on how each particular case is approached, I'd have thought.
So we can break that data down further, and I can certainly look at doing that afterwards if you want to see that in the detail in relation to it. The majority of the offences that we record are for persons aged 16 and over. So we can break it down by way of age category, offender known, not known, recent, non-recent. So that you know, sort of categorisation can happen in relation to you having a greater understanding in relation to the offences, if that would be helpful.
Yes, I think it would. Chris, would you find that useful? Yeah, thank you. Yes, that would be grateful. Thank you. I have a question on Operation Soteria. I'm not sure whether that was for in the update or the annual report, to be honest with you. That's the next report. So I'll hold it then. Okay. Anybody, any other questions at all on the annual report? Yes, go on, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Page 18, the Checkpoint Cymru. Would it be possible to have a report sometime regarding this? Because it was a couple of years ago that we had a full presentation. Some members of staff came in to discuss with us. Just about the refunding rates and things. I must have missed the last one, sorry.
No problem, but Anna Baker came in at the last meeting.
Yeah.
Was it December, was it?
Yeah.
But we can request that again, I suppose.
I think if I remember rightly, they were getting extra staff at that time, and
yeah,
that's
that's right.
out. So I think it's an update that we.
Yeah, if we can leave it, we've got a deep dive on that as well about checkpoints that when we have our SEB meeting. So more than happy to do it after then. We've got a deep dive in August, so September meeting, if that's all right with you, Chair.
You happy with that, Nigel?
Yeah, apologies, I must have missed the December meeting. It's just to look at the success rates really of reoffending and you know, the amount of people coming through the system, how many reoffend percentages really.
Yeah, that would be great for Captain. Thank you. Yes, Chris.
And but on page 15 in the hate crime, and again, this is one of the priorities for the Police and Crime Commissioner. You're welcome. But again, you know, BBC News reports last week were highlighting the fact that many of these cases, again, go unreported, and they only reflect the tip of the iceberg, as it were. There was a councillor from Pembrokeshire actually featured in that particular programme, and again, he'd been subject to homophobic hate crimes and so on. You know, so again, I'm just wondering what more we can actually do to encourage people to come forward with these particular cases. I know the chief of the Police and Crime Commissioner is doing his best in this respect, but it's only the tip of the iceberg, as I say, we're given to understand, and a lot of people, vulnerable people particularly, and from particular minority groups, and very reluctant to come forward for whatever reason. Thank you.
Commissioner.
Yeah, Thanks, Chair. No, hate crime is there is an improvement in that area, and improving performance still needs to be worked on. But I think, as my annual report would have shown, is that engagement we're having now across all parts of North Wales, where I've been to quite a number of, it was on Saturday, I was in Carnarvon at Pride. And I believe there's something on in Mold on Thursday evening as well, which I'm hoping to attend. But I think by being out there and engaging with different types of communities, whatever their background is, whatever their religion is, whatever their sexual orientation is, however they identify, I'm more than happy to meet with all types of people to listen to what they're experiencing, and then bring that in and let the Chief Constable notice, so that the North Wales Police can improve on their performance regarding that. And I think that's key to it, really, which stands out for me, especially in that annual report, where you've seen how significantly the engagement and communications has improved with the introduction of Matt. And I don't want to embarrass him now, but since Matt's been in since March, that has improved dramatically. And I think whenever I've been out, I've had lots of positive comments made towards me, how we're listening, how we're there to listen to what they've got to say, and how we can work together.
Thank you. Anybody, any further questions or comments? Okay, in which case then, can I have a proposer and somebody to second the to approve the report? So you're going to second it then? Okay, thank you very much. And ask members to show of hands, please, in support of the. Thank you. Moving on now to item 10B, which is a periodic update by the North Wales Police and Crime Commissioner. Commissioner, you'd like to take this action?
Yeah, just take it as read as before, Chair, and happy to take any questions.
Anybody, any questions at all on the report?
To the children and young people's engagement, the ambassadors, I'm just wondering how this particular group was selected, really, how they representative of all areas across the region and all groups.
Yes, Stephen.
Yeah, good question, Chris. It was an open invitation, basically, for the children and young people themselves to apply to become members. I think I'm right in saying that they've had 2 meetings so far, really productive, really good group of people. I couldn't give you detail in terms of the demographic, and but I'll get that for you for the next meeting, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else, any questions at all? Okay, thank you. I think mentioned within the report of domestic abuse and liaison with the Crown Prosecution Service. What I'm concerned about is that, how does that liaison take place? Is it face-to-face contact with the reporting officer and a member of CPS, or are CPS still working from home, and is it by email and whatever? And how effective is that, if that is the case?
Diolch, thank you, Chair. So there's a variety of different ways. If it's a complex case, then generally the officer will have an appointment to meet with the CPS lawyer that's prosecuting and work through the details. So, you can imagine that sort of high-end, complex, serious organised crime, murder, all of that type of thing. Then you'll have the serious complex crime. If it's a sexual offence, there's a specific team within CPS that deal with that, the rape and serious sexual offences team, so the RASO team. And we do also have a CPS Direct, which is a email of the file in relation to CPS, with a reply that might not necessarily, unless you're looking for a remand in custody, be straight away. Certainly joining North Wales Police, speaking to the officers that are currently working their way through all of the complexities that sit around files. We've had so many changes in relation to even things like redaction of material, disclosure. It's a really complex area. And I speak with the lead for CPS on a 6-weekly basis. I talk to her about some of the cases that we've challenged in relation to decisions and how those have been identified and brought forward. We're just in the process of bringing together a file build team for domestic violence, recognising that actually there's some expertise required in that area. And actually, if we don't get it right first time from a file build point of view, then we're likely to lose the victim. And we don't want to do that. So we're looking at those areas to see how we can shore that up. But there's a variety of different ways, and obviously you know, the 31 years of me, sort of 20 years ago, it would have been that I'd have sat with a CPS lawyer and discussed the case, gone through the detail in relation to it. That probably doesn't happen now as often as it used to do. And I'm certainly working with the lead for CPS to see how we can make that a better, more joined up process for our officers who are dealing with what is a very complex area of our business, really.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Wayne, did you wish to go in?
Yeah, and just to build on that as well, we also do a lot. Obviously, Andy chairs the local criminal justice board, which CPS are partners, and HMCTS amongst others are partners. So we're always looking at ways to share best practice and make sure that our VCOP dip sampling and our victims and witnesses work is joined up with CPS on a strategic level, and that also extends across Wales to the All Wales LCJB as well. And just picking up on the point before about the timelines that are on the Ministry of Justice scorecard, we're in some debate at the minute about those figures just to check the accuracy that they are correct. And, you know, they may well be correct, but you can sometimes get one or two cases that will skew figures. But we also want to make sure that the data that's going in the first place is equal across all 4 areas in Wales, so that we're measuring the same thing. But I would say no one should be put off coming forward to report something. They can do it in full confidence. And we would always encourage that.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Anybody any other questions at all? No? I just did have one operation. Can't even pronounce it. Sorry, Sataria. Do we have any further details on that at all?
Yeah, there is an update there where we're up to at the moment. Although we weren't a pilot force, we were an early adopter. And as it says there, there is the draft project plan is on track. When we did our deep dive around VAUG and sexual offences just recently in May, we did get an update from the force that everything was on track. The project team have been in force, and the second phase of the self-assessment has been completed. And then between June and July this year, the new national operating model is going to be delivered to each participating force. And then once that's been received, the North Wales plan will be updated. So probably by the next meeting, in response to the question, we can give you a further update on it there. But the one thing I would say is those early adopter forces and the pilot forces have seen an upturn in performance in terms of positive outcomes for rape investigation, you know, aligned to the 5 pillars approach that was adopted at the beginning of Sataria.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Anybody any further questions at all? Thank you. Can I have a proposer to note the report on a 72nd, please? Chris and Pat, thank you. And can I have a show of hands to note the report, please? Thank you. Item 10C, complaint scrutiny, reporting period 1st of April 2022 to the 31st of March 2023. And I understand it's Stephen who's taking this item. Stephen.
Again, Chair, just thanks to the team in the OPCC for pulling the report together. We'll take it as read, and again, happy to take any questions the panel members may have.
Do you have any questions on it at all? No? Okay. Can I ask somebody to propose it and somebody to second it, please? Chris and Pat again. Okay. Show of hands, please. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 11A, North Wales Police and Crime Panel, end of year monitoring report, 1st of April 2022 to the 31st of March 2023. This for you, Dawn.
Thanks, Chair. So the report is before you on page 39. So as you're aware, the panel receives a grant from the Home Office for the administration of the panel, and claims are submitted on a 6-monthly basis. So we've submitted the end of year claim to the Home Office together with the panel's annual report, which reports on activities including number of meetings, scrutiny documents, publications, and engagement with the Commissioner and the public. And Appendix 2 at page 47 gives further details of this work and also includes some forward planning. So as you can see from Annex 1 and Appendix 1, the PCP has not used all its grant this year. Therefore, Conway, as the host authority, does not have to absorb any of the overspend as we have done in previous years. So the PCP needs to assure itself that the grant is utilised to undertake its key deliverables as outlined on the bottom of page 39. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you. Are we happy that we're going to use all the grant this year?
We may do because of the panel didn't meet, wasn't established until September last year because of the elections. We missed out on a few meetings, didn't we? So I presume we'll use most of it this year.
Okay, thank you. Anybody got any questions at all? No. Thank you. Let's ask somebody to propose it. We'll go to Louise and Chris to second it. Thank you very much, everybody, and ask members to show their hands to support, not the report. Thank you. And item 11B. To consider the forward work programme for the North Wales Police and Crime Panel, which is pages 53 to 54. And again, Dawn is taking this item.
Yeah, so the forward plan has been updated to include all the regular and statutory items that are due in the forthcoming year. So if members want to include any other items which relate to the work of the PCP, please let myself or the chair know.
Anybody any questions at all? No, thank you. Can I ask the proposer, please? Stephen and Chris. Thank you. And can I ask members to show their hands to note the report? And then item 12, which is the last item, the date of the next meeting is Monday, the 25th of September at 2023 at 2 p.m. That's it. You got anything else, Dave? No. No. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending today. Thank you, Chief Constable, for coming, and thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, everybody.